Okay, so I just moved to the opposite side of my kitchen. What I'm doing now is I'm taking pot that I want to cook my soup in. I like to use one that has a lid on it, so it sort of helps with condensation and evaporation. What I'm going to do now is something that's really important that you're going to use a lot, and it's called called sweating vegetables, not steaming, sweating. So I'm going to take a little bit of fat, and this fat, I like to use olive oil, but I could use butter, I can use bacon grease, I can use shortening, I can use margarine, I can use any kind of fat that I have. And then what I'm doing is I'm taking this mirepoix that I just made, and remember, half of it is onion, a fourth is carrots, a fourth of it is celery, and I'm going to go ahead and put that into my oil. So I'm just going to drop it in to my oil, and then I'm going to just stir that around until it does what we called sweat. Now, just like people sweat and they let off moisture when they're sweating and out and exercising, when you heat up vegetables in oil, they also sweat, and they do two things. Like onions do a really interesting thing. The flavor of an onion is the same, once you sweat it, is actually the same as an apple, because the essential oils are released, and so you get rid of that sharper onion taste and it gets more sweet. I have my celery, which offers a more bitter kind of a taste, and yet at the same time it's going to complement my onions really well. And then I've got my carrots that just round out my flavor. While that's cooking, and while that's getting nice and hot, and I'm starting in just a couple of minutes, it's going to start steaming, I'm going to put just a little bit of whatever seasoning I want. Right now I'm putting a little bit of salt and pepper, and I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit more. I'm just going to take a couple pinches of salt. If I wanted to, I could put basil, I could put oregano, I could put any kind of seasoning that I want. And like I said, this is called, you're getting a lot of vocabulary today, this is called sweating the vegetables. And I just want to keep sweating them until they get nice and you can start seeing that they actually have moisture coming out of them. If there was such a thing as smell-o-vision, you'd be smelling the flavors coming together. I could smell the celery and the carrots and the onions, and they're all just sort of getting cooked together there. So I just let them come, and basically they'll start to sizzle. So sweating, the purpose of it is to, as I said, round out the flavors, allow them to meld a little bit. It also brings out the flavor of the spices, because all spices come from plants. And so we're going to be talking about that next week. We're going to be talking about how to season things a little bit. You'll have some curry paste that we'll talk about and how to use that. Now you can hear the sizzle. I like that sizzling, and I'm just going to let it sizzle for about another 30 seconds. So what will happen is, just so you know what's going on on the next part of this, I'm going to go ahead and allow this to sizzle once I feel like these have sweated and they're starting to really smell good. I am now going to add, oh, that's good, I can hear that. I'm going to add 1 quart or about, and honestly, from this point on, it's not like the baking we did, it's more like cooking, and so it's not an exact science. But I'm going to add my water. And I'm going to allow this, I'm going to cover it and allow it to simmer. Now what simmer means is that I bring it to a boil, and then once it has a boil, I'm then going to turn it down and just allow it to simmer all day. So once this simmers, I'm going to allow it to go for about 4 hours, and in 4 hours, I will be back. Okay, I'm back. It's been about 4.5 hours, so I wanted to show you the next part. So you made your mirepoix, you sweated the vegetables, you added your water, and you've made yourself some vegetable stock. Okay, now the difference between a stock and a broth usually has some kind of bones or meat in it. A stock can have, but normally doesn't. It also, a broth tends to have more flavor and more seasonings to it, where this one doesn't. So what I'm going to do now is I've been simmering it, which means it's just been under boil. I mean, just like barely boiling over the last 3 hours. I have a colander here, a strainer, and then below it I have a heat-proof measuring cup so I can measure my stock. I'm going to be pouring it very gently in here so I can get all those juices. Now, you could choose to save these vegetables if you want, but honestly, all the vegetables, all of the good stuff out of them has now been cooked in out of the vegetables, so there's not much left in them. And then what you have left is, instead of water, you have this wonderful stock. Now, this is the base for a lot of sauces, a lot of soups, and so what I'm gonna do is, I am just a second, I am going to, I'm just gonna saute some meat and throw some vegetables and some pot stickers into my soup and just make myself some soup. You can put beans, you can put rice, you can put spaghetti, you can put whatever. It's a great way to use leftovers, is just to use this as to basically put those back into your pan, add the sauce, and you've got soup. So hopefully that will be good. I'll show you what mine looks like in just a minute.